So we will now start the panel discussion and questions and answers on freedom of expression online in the Mekong region, improving self-regulations. I would like to present our moderator for this session, Ms. Anissa Widayasari, Advocacy Officer from the Southeast Asia Press Alliance, SEAPA. Please.
Thank you, Akane, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is also excited for this session. Before we start this session, I will introduce first our panelists here. The first one is Yingcheep Atchanont. Yingcheep is currently the program manager from iLaw, Thailand. And then the next one is Vicheika Kann. Vicheika Kann is currently a reporter from VOA Khmer service based in Cambodia. The next one is Yin Yadanar Thein. Yin is the co-founder of Free Expression Myanmar based in Yangon. And then last but not least is Sheen Handoo from Facebook. She's the public policy manager for the Asia Pacific region. Okay, so before we start this discussion, we will discuss today, the topic that we will discuss today is concerning the freedom of expression online in the Mekong region, improving self-regulation. So when we talk about freedom of expression in the Mekong region, we'll be facing restrictive laws limiting the freedom of expression online. In this region, the authorities often cite national security in order to enhance surveillance and restrict freedom of speech, posing challenges for both privacy and media freedom. These restrictive laws are often being used in the region, which include cybercrime laws, telecommunication laws, penal code, regulating actions such as defamation, sedition, and lèse-majesté. However, as how we can see, instead of creating a safe space online, these laws are actually creating an atmosphere of fear. It's not unusual that in the practice, those laws are deliberately being used to suppress the voice of dissent, especially targeting human rights defenders and journalists who are being critical of the power holders. When discussing these laws, we cannot forget that the online space keeps expanding, even as we talk at this moment. It's very easy now to spread hate speech, misleading information, and the online platform has also giving birth to new form of harassment, including leaking of personal information, cyber trolls, and online death threats, which are prominently being used against journalists and human rights defenders. However, is stricter regulation from the government the answer to all of these problems? In many cases, at least from the free expression point of view, much laws and regulations in practices has proved to be more problematic than lack of regulation. Many laws fail to differentiate the liability difference between media institutions that publish or broadcast content online and internet platforms that mainly host content produced by third party. We can see that the effect of this is the tendency of the platforms to just take the simplest and cheapest route by removing any contested content and handing over user data to other actors without due process. So with the fast expansion of the internet and the online space, the laws might not be able to keep up with the development, and in the end would fail in striking a balance between protecting the freedom of expression online and creating a safe space in the internet. That's why this discussion is now more important than ever to discuss about the self-regulation in the online space. In essence, self-regulation means that the online space is supposed to regulate itself without intervention from external bodies, including the government. This vision is also reflected in UNESCO's Internet Universality and Rome Principle, as well as RSF Journalism Trust Initiative will be presented later in the second session. But now we will discuss about, when we're talking about self-regulation, what is it that we are actually talking about? What kind of self-regulation we wish to see in regards to freedom of expression online? Do we really need that, and who are the key players? We will discuss this after discussing what are actually the challenges of freedom of expression online in the Mekong region, and how do the governments and internet companies have been handling and addressing those challenges so far. So we'll start with Yingcheep from Thailand. Maybe you can explain to ask how do you think is the current situation of freedom of expression online in Thailand, and what are the challenges that you're facing?
Okay. Hello, สวัสดีครับ Hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming to talk about press freedom in Thailand. We are now still living under the regime of military junta. Besides the less majestic law, the Computer Crime Act, the sedition laws that we have talked about these for years already. Today I want to highlight today as a Press Freedom Day, the World Press Freedom Day. I want to highlight some NCPO announcements that focus only on mainstream media. There are actually many announcements and orders issued by the military junta when they seized the power many years ago. I want to highlight the NCPO announcement number 97 of the year 2014. This announcement prohibits media from reporting content that deemed to be an incitement to create conflict or disharmony or confusion to the public. And it also prohibits the media from interviewing people with opinion against the junta. The prohibition is quite broad and vague, and the military don't really exercise this announcement by itself, but they also issue another order to give this power to the NBTC to exercise it. NBTC is the National Broadcasting and Telecommunication Commission. We can document at least 52 times that the NBTC summoned media in order to punish them from reporting political contents. We know the famous Voice TV case. Voice TV is the television channel that deemed to be against the military, and Voice TV was already punished for 19 times, including fine, including suspend for 7 days, 3 days, and some television channel were already ordered to shut down. We have talked too less about this issue, but today at this time another panel at the Journalist Association of Thailand, they are also talking about this. Maybe it is the first time that we talk about it, and they are going to launch a campaign to abolish these NCPO orders that are controlling the media. This is our situation. Maybe the trend is changing not only in Thailand but in all Southeast Asian country. Even though we are living under military government, but the government is also changing. They don't really exercise physical force. They don't send the army to use the guns to shut down media directly, but they're trying to do something on behalf of laws sometimes issued by the NCPO directly, laws sometimes issued by the absolute power parliament, or some country the laws are issued by a single ruling party. For example, like in Malaysia, they have the new anti-fake news laws, and in Thailand there are many laws passed by the NLA, National Legislative Assembly, which they are appointed by the junta, and we have at least 500 something orders and announcements that issued by the junta to control not only media but all kind of freedom of expressions and basic human rights of the people.
Okay. Thank you for your explanation. When you see for this targeted cases against this mainstream media, do you also see that the same trend happening to not for the media community but also for outside the media community?
Yeah. Of course, for like ordinary people, common people who express their opinion online, maybe on Facebook and on the street, they can be arrested here easily. We have the NCPO order number 3 of the year 2015. This is kind of a martial law. The name is changed, but it was exercised, it was enforced as a martial law. It prohibits people from political gathering up to 5 persons. We can document at least 390 persons already arrested and prosecuted under this charge. Sedition law is another tools that military is trying to use to threaten people to not expressing their view against the military or the government policy. Sedition law is quite old and live with Thai society for many years, but it is very often used for during the recent 3 or 4 years under the NCPO regime. We can document at least 94 or something people who were arrested and prosecuted under sedition law with the highest penalty of 7 years in prison, and around half of them are prosecuted at military courts. So it's a bit difficult. Living here, we can saying something to criticize the military government. It doesn't mean we cannot say anything at all. We still can say something. But if that issue become the hot issue, or if the military thinks this issue can shake their stability, then someone will be arrested. Someone will be arrested as a victim to threaten the public and to show the public that the military has some power to control the information in the society.
Thank you. And also, you may have also realized, maybe not only in the Mekong region, but in Southeast Asia and in general currently in the world, that there's a rise of disinformation or fake news. Do you think that is also happening here, like the rise of fake news regulating in the society?
Yes, actually a lot, but not obviously as a professional media, but it comes on Facebook, like trolls, like on many sites, not only by the military sites, but it is obviously that there are many fake information or fake discourses that come from the pro-military sides and also the other side as well. But we actually have the CCA, Computer Crime Act 2007, and it was amended last year. The Computer Crime Act already prohibit any false information that deemed to be against national security, public order, or economic stability, or public safety, or anything. So we don't have the so-called anti-fake news laws directly, but spreading something that is not true online is already a crime here under CCA with a penalty of 5 years in prison. So I think we have too good tool already to counter with the fake news.
Okay, so the laws in Thailand are already prepared.
Yeah. Actually, we have before many countries.
Okay. Is that a good thing though?
Not sure.
Okay, so now can I ask Vicheika to also present to us about the challenges faced in Cambodia about freedom of expression online?
Thank you. Well, in Cambodia, the freedom of expression online is very down now. In the past, no one was arrested because of they expressed themselves or posted something on Facebook. But recently, lots of people were arrested and sent into the jail and accused as the incitement of discriminate. Recently, this Monday and yesterday, 2 young women and young men already arrested, and they also questioned about their posted on Facebook. Well, I think I want to show you the slide. And the government in Cambodia now, they try to create like the draft or adopted, like just adopted the new law, like the cybercrime law, telecommunication law, access of information draft law now, and like the criminal law, such as the article that they just adopted about the lèse majesté law. So now the government also considers the anti-fake news law. I don't know why they want to adopt or draft those laws. But in Cambodia, after those laws adopted or draft, now the government try to use those laws to against the people, especially to the like activists or people who support opposition party. Like even the former opposition leader also accused about his posted on Facebook. Some of people also accused when they just expressed their idea or their self on the Facebook or internet, and then the prosecutor charged them around 18 months in the jail. And we can say that in the past the government didn't do like that, but now they started to do, and they are continuing. And for our, I'm sorry. Well, we are worried about this. Even us, we are the journalists. When we write something or we want to express our idea on Facebook or internet, we need to think twice. Or we ask ourselves that, is it safe? Is it a good information? If we post this, so the government can attack us by this information. Yeah. So it's very limited our expression.
Yeah. So when you're saying that the journalists here are being targeted by a lawsuit, what kind of lawsuits that are usually being used against them? Is it like defamation or maybe other lawsuits?
In the past, the government used the defamation to against the journalist, and it also written on the law too. But now the government usually use the discriminate, incitement of discrimination. Yeah, and this article could send the people to the jail, but defamation article did not.
Okay. So as far as I'm aware, recently Cambodia, like also you mentioned earlier, that you are releasing the Les Majes law. Has it been used in some way after the enactment of the law?
Well, one of the former opposition official, they already, he was accused by that law before they adopted that law. Before, we don't know how the government used that law against him, because at the time he didn't have, and that law just adopted recently. At the time, he talked to his colleague on phone, and then someone tapped his voice or his conversation, and then they published, and the prosecutor used that tapping as the evidence and accused him.
Oh, so the law is being used retroactively?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you also notice other worrying trends against journalists? Is online harassment a common thing for journalists in Cambodia?
Excuse me?
Online harassment, like like cyber trolls, or also the leaking of personal information, or maybe just online messages like rape threats, death threats that are unfortunately happening in this region.
Yeah, recently this problem is very concerned. I don't say that the government do that. We don't know whom, but like the Facebook page, someone tapped it or they hacked their account and posted in public, and then the government used those posted. Just those posts or the steps to against the people, and we found that almost all of the people that they were accused or like against are not the government officials. The most of them, I mean, just they are the activists or the opposition party supporter.
Oh, so there's a pattern, like mostly these attacks are against those who are not in line with the current government. It's morely like attacking the opposition.
Yeah, and the most of people say that in Cambodia they have two standards. Okay, yeah, two standards. Even like the prosecutor, they also apply the standard to different way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Vicheika. And also, Yin, can you share how is it in Myanmar?
And firstly, I would like to thank for having me here, SEAPA, UNESCO, and the Embassy of Sweden. Firstly, I would like to explain about my organization so that you will understand my perspective on this discussion. So my organization, it is called Free Expression Myanmar. So we are actually basically working on advocating for the legal reform to promote the right to freedom of expression and the right to information inside the country. So this is firstly what we are doing. So in Myanmar, like other country in Mekong region, yes, our freedom of expression, the level of freedom of expression declines sadly. In the media field, recently RSF, make the release a report, and previously our country media freedom was 137 point. Now it's declined to the 131. So 6th index, we decline. It is really sad to see that, but the government. The Minister for Information, our Minister for Information said that this RSF report is biased because, they have biased by the international media and international expert. So yesterday, we Free Expression Myanmar, we released the report. The report is the result of nationwide media survey inside the country. So it is purely we focus on the journalists. Journalists, editor, every media professional. We didn't focus on the student and other civil society members. So every person in the report, in the survey said they believe that media freedom is declining. Also comparing to the previous year, they didn't compare to the other country and other international standard. It is really pure as part of the journalists. This is the media fee, and also like for the offline right to freedom of expression, let's say for the protests, we have right to, how can I say, in our constitution it's that there is the right to freedom of expression and also assembly for the citizen, but we have the law, that law a bit contractive to the constitution. So currently the law, it didn't focus on like spontaneous counter-strike or like this kind of stuff. And also, it's the law said we have to send a notification, not the permission at all, not like in the previous government. In the 2016, it's amended. So it said we have to send the prior notification to the authority, relevant authority, township administrative, township police, etc. Even though the law said it is notification, but the in the sanction, in the chapter of the sanction, is that if you didn't make any prior notification within 48 hours, within 48 hours, you cannot be you can be sent to the prison under the provision of the sanction. Meanwhile, the government, now NLD government is trying to, they are in the process of adopting the amendment of the protest law, which is quite horrifying, because the, in the new amendment bill, a new amendment law, it said, they are trying to address who is the source of the funding for that protest. So we, civil society and other international community are pushing the government to drop the amendment law, because it is really impacting negatively to the right to freedom of expression and a right to protest. Because the organizer, why we don't really understand why they focus on the organizer, and they don't have any clear, how can I say, guideline for the police. They only focus on the organizer, but on the other hand, they don't have any clear guideline for the police when they can use a force, what kind of, what amount of force, like this kind of stuff. There is nothing in the law. So in the stage for the right to assembly, right to protest is really horrifying. So now I'm gonna move to the social media, freedom of expression. So social media means in our country is Facebook. Sheen is also here. So on this Facebook, people, they don't have, of course they can write, to post whatever they believe in their opinion, because Facebook, they are, community standard, so they are working on that. But the government, when they are, when the individual, journalist, the human rights defender or political activist, when they post about it is a big offense against the government, they don't like that, that post, and then they mostly sue the person under the telecommunications law. We have two defamations law. One is offline defamations, and another one is online defamation. The online defamation provision is under the telecommunications law. So currently there have been over 120 cases within 2 years since the NLD government came off and they ruled the power. So it is a lot of cases under the telecommunications law, under the online defamation provision. It is really weird and also unacceptable, for a government who raised and who announced that they are the democratic government. So this is currently what is happening inside the country.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So for this defamation cases against, there's 120 cases for just 2 years.
Yeah.
And are those who are using this law, are they mostly from the government or also from other sectors?
Yeah, mostly. Previously, we released the report called "No Real Change for the 66D." It is called 66D inside the telecommunications law. Why we said that? Because the government, because of the push and encouragement of the CSO and other international pressure, they had to amend it. But in their amendment, they didn't abolish the defamation ground. So still, because of they still want to put the defamation ground, because the main challenges is they don't want to protect the citizen. They want to protect themselves for their defamation, for their reputation, and whatever they said, they said is they also have the right to protection, even though they are the government, sitting inside the government sector. So in that findings, we found that that defamation law, the use of the defamation, online defamation law, came from the other sector too. Yes, but mostly it came from the government sector. So the government mean not like in Thailand, what my colleague Yingcheep said. We have two governments. One is the people's government. Another one is the military. So the military use that kind of online defamation law, other offline defamation law, sedition act, to sue, to complain and to prosecute the journalists and other political activists. So mostly the driven of the use of the online defamation law came from the political side, from the government.
It's interesting now you're saying that there's a different laws between online defamation and offline defamation. How about the sanction? Which one is harsher?
The sanction is this, online defamation law, and after the amendment, it said up to 2 years, but offline up to 3 years. You cannot, I think, we cannot, measure the threshold of the, that sanction and that law because of the imprisonment, and we measure, and we civil society measure that the online defamation law is, that threshold of the online defamation is really higher because it is really easy to, apply from the, because it is the police recognition act. So someone can be arrested and detained, even though he is in the public space. Like, and we have we already have the experience that our investigative reporter, he's being sued under that law, and then he tried to he got a bail actually, but he tried to fly to other country for his work thing. He already reported to the police station, but the police arrest him in the police station, at the airport of Yangon. Yeah, so that is why that threshold is really high. And also another thing is when someone complain against someone under that telecommunications law, online defamation act, mostly it's generally it is 100% conviction rate. So because we don't have any clear, how can I say, guideline or principle for electronic evidence. We don't have any electronic evidence at, and also at the same point, the court, the judges, they should be actually independent, but they are not. So they didn't listen to the other independent expert witness. They came up and they said, okay, you got what are the evidence you got for this case, certain case. They get, okay, these are the evidence. It is in print out in the A4 paper. So someone, everyone can Photoshop it. It is really easy. And mostly the judges, they don't even know how to use Facebook, how to use Twitter. At all. So when the the independent expert said, it is not really acceptable, when you don't have the electronic evidence guideline. But the court charged like generally 6 imprisonment for that telecommunications law. Yeah.
So when we're talking about this laws that being used, are you seeing like there's a certain
when they got this kind of offensive, post, offensive expression against them, they are not tolerant. They don't have any thick skin, so they sue that, they complain against a person. So mostly coming from the government side and targeting to the political activists and journalists.
So in terms of these threats against the journalists and political activists, is it online harassment also a thing that is happening? Like,
no. How can I say? Not like the online harassment thing. Mostly the journalists, they have already printed this certain news article, like say satire article. Actually, satire article is not the fact. Everyone knows here. It is just opinion. But the government, they sue it as a fact. Someone is defaming based on the fact. That's they are assuming. So. When you're saying is like, for the journalists, they printed on offline and they posted online. This is why they being, they being sent into the prison or sent to the trail for this telecommunications telecommunications law. And mostly, we have actually penal code. There is a term exemption for the defamation. So actually they are now in the process to monitor the ICT sector. They already they already allocate the budget to set up the ICT monitoring mechanism inside the country. So we contact Facebook and we ask what did the government engage to Facebook, because we really worry about that. So they said no, the government hasn't done anything yet, but we worry because when they are talking about the ICT, mostly is, mostly fake news, hate speech, and these kind of thing happening inside the Facebook platform, on the Facebook platform. So we really worry that how they're gonna monitor it, what kind of questions they're gonna focus on. So this is what the government doing. And on the other hand, the other, we civil society, raise the questions and also the, demand to the Facebook too, because at the same point, we don't want the government to regulate us, to monitor our flow of information. It should be totally free. So we want some kind of, self-regulation process. It's like we want the quality mediation process of the, Facebook, by the Facebook. So we want how can I say, we want Facebook to support the freedom of expression, and also, to regulate, and, the other, potential incitement to the violence, not a small degree of hate speech.
Okay.
So that's what we are talking, and in the process we are talking with the Facebook, and we heard that I would like to hear more from Sheen also. We heard that Facebook has already recruiting the Myanmar staff. I mean, Myanmar staff means the staff who can read Burmese language, because when you are addressing the speech, it is really important to know the context of the words, the vocabulary, the words, the usage is really important. But now currently we know we have phases like, Facebook have the automatic decision-making process, algorithm.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So these are not really perfect, to address what is really,
We have a 5-point approach at Facebook. First one obviously being the policies, so your community standards that sort of set out what's okay and what's not okay to be shared on the platform. The second one is the tools that we provide for people to report content to us. So every piece of content on Facebook is reportable. The third one is help and resources. At every stage on our platform, we provide with help and resources to people who are looking for more information in terms of how do we use the information, how do you report the content, what type of content is again okay and not okay. The fourth one is partnerships. We develop our policies and programs with the help of safety experts, academics, and NGOs, civil society members, policymakers, and we look for their expertise and guidance while doing that. Whether it be women's safety, child safety, journalist safety, we work with partners across countries while developing our programs and as well as our policies. The fifth, and I think perhaps one of the most important, is feedback. We rely on the feedback of the people who use our platform and also the experts in our community to sort of let us know what is working and what is not working. And I think one of the great examples is the use of kalar. We did put that, what we call our slurs, which are used in a derogatory manner as a hate speech against people belonging to certain ethnicity, nationality, or race. When we started using our sort of automation to remove the word, because that was also based on the feedback we received that kalar is being used in derogatory manner. When we started removing that, we did receive feedback from our community on the ground saying that, well, kalar is not just used in derogatory way, but it is also used in different kinds of way. It can also be used in a self-referential way, right? So we sort of made the decision that we are not going to remove everything that sort of uses the word kalar, but we will still use automation to catch the content that is using that word, but it will come to a native language speaker who will review that content to make sure that it actually is being used in a derogatory manner or as hate speech against people from, from Myanmar. So these are the kind of things that we work with our partners with and our community with to just like talk about our policies and, just like get feedback from them. In terms of policies, let me sort of like deep dive into the policies that we have. As you might expect, with people interacting across borders, we have to develop a global set of policies. So our policies are not different for, say, Southeast Asia to what we have in the Europe or in the Americas. They're all global policies. We want to, and in order to be able to do that, to have global set of policies which are applicable to people belonging to different cultures, different ethnicities, and from different parts of the world, we have certain policy principles that we follow. And I think I have said this word so many times: safety, safety, safety. Safety is paramount for us. People need to feel safe in order to build communities, and we are committed to removing content that encourages real-world harm, which includes physical harm, financial harm, or even emotional injury. The second one is voice. Our mission is all about embracing diverse views, so we err on the side of allowing content even when some people find it objectionable, unless removing that content can actually prevent a specific kind of harm. And the third one, and I feel like is one of the most important, is equity. Our community is global and diverse, and our policies may seem broad, but that is because we apply them consistently and fairly to a community that transcends regions, cultures, and languages. Now, in the last year, Facebook has sought to increase transparency around our policies, and we have taken a few steps. The first one being that we have started publishing a hard questions blog that gives insights into our thinking on tough topics like hate speech and terrorism. We have done that, and we have also talked about like how do we deal with hate speech, like how sometimes it is difficult to establish context and even intent, whether that actually is intended to be a hate speech or whether that's just a person's opinion, right? So that's how we sort of think through these policies, and we do that now by publishing our hard questions blog so that people understand how are we dealing with these tough issues. The second one is that we are also committing to greater transparency around advertisement. So people can now actually go to the pages and see all the advertisement that the page is running. So they have visibility in terms of, and more transparency in terms of what kind of ads the particular page is running. The third one is that we have now started including intellectual property takedowns in our biannual 6-monthly transparency report. As you most of you might know that Facebook releases its transparency report, which sort of gives out the details of the number of pieces of content we have restricted pursuant to local law or requests from a local government, and also cases where we have provided information to government when they have followed certain legal procedure and there is legal sufficiency in terms of the request. So now what we have done is that in addition to content takedown and basic subscriber information data, we have also started including intellectual property takedown requests as well. Last, but I think one of the most important of these sort of transparency work we have done is that we have now published our not just community standards, which are always there, but our internal community standards. So what we had before were just like our policy rationale in terms of what is okay and what is not okay to be shared on the platform, but we also had internal facing policies which were in much more detail. So hate speech, how do you define hate speech? What kind of attack is hate speech? Is it dehumanizing speech? Is it violent speech? Is it exclusionary speech? So all of that now is available, and this happened last, I think, April 25th, that we published our comprehensive community standards. And I think the reason why we are doing that is also like, this is the feedback we are hearing from the community. This is the feedback we have been hearing from the panelists, from not just this, discussion, but wherever we go. And I think it sort of provides more granularity to people for them to understand how our community standards are applied to their posts on Facebook. Secondly, the releasing more detailed policy will allow Facebook to initiate a sort of a global dialogue on them. So when you guys read the policy, you can always come back to us and say that, hey, your policy on hate speech or your policy on credible threats of violence doesn't really include this scenario. This is what is happening in our community, and we are ready to have those conversations, and that is also one of the reasons why we published these guidelines. And then greater dialogue can actually foster understanding of the challenges we face in creating these policies. So again, a lot of people will say Kalar is a slur, but is it really a slur? So I think this will sort of initiate that dialogue, that process of conversation where we will understand not just like one person's point of view, but everybody's point of view. In terms of tools, I think policies are there to tell people what is okay and sort of guide the conversations on the platform, but it is also very important to enforce those policies. And the tools that we have are meant to enforce those policies, or rather help us enforce those policies, because as you might know, Facebook doesn't proactively monitor content. We do respond to requests. We do respond to the reports that we receive. We do, however, go proactively for certain kinds of content, including child exploitative imagery or formal propaganda, which is spread by terrorist organizations such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So we do that, but we also depend heavily on user reports. So people need to report that content before we can actually review that. I think overall, as Facebook, we agree that yes, we are trying to make efforts to be more transparent. We want to have these conversations. We want to continue having these conversations so that we learn from each other. And I know Yin and I have had these conversations in terms of like, how do we work together for not just Myanmar, but other Southeast Asian countries as well, work with civil society organizations to, and not just civil society organizations, but journalists and activists, to how to keep their accounts safe, how to keep their information safe, how to use WhatsApp or secret messages on Messenger to keep their information on their conversation secure. So these are the kind of things that we are doing at a very broad manner, but I think there is definitely scope for us to do more, and we will keep doing more.
Okay, thank you very much for your sharing. And just one question, actually, you mentioned about sometimes you get, of course, get government requests. And how are you facing this, especially in this region? Are there like increased demand from the government, especially in terms of data localization or data sharing, and how the team in Facebook handles that kind of requests?
Thank you for that. That's a good question. And just let me, as you know, as a company, we are committed to protecting the rights of our community, and we want to provide a place where people can feel safe to express themselves without fearing any kind of threat. We have community standards, and then even besides community standards, you're right, we do restrict content based on local law. We have clear and consistent government request process for this, which is no different for this region than any of the rest of the world. We are very transparent about the content we restrict, so it is all of that information in terms of the number of requests we receive and the number of content, pieces of content we actually restricted pursuant to local law is available on the website. It's available where what we call our transparency government request report. So all of that information is there, and I would encourage everybody in this room to just go through that report and understand, you know, the kind of processes we follow. Okay. And also, again, I said we are ready to work with civil society on this issue specifically, and to protect the community from unnecessary and overreaching government intervention.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. So now I want to go back to the other panelists. Can we now talk about, after we're talking about these challenges and we see how the laws are being used in practice, how do you think yourself about this idea of self-regulation, and what is self-regulation in your mind when it's talking about freedom of expression online? Can you start with Yingcheep?
Okay, here in Thailand, I think self-regulation is still just an abstract concept with not really practical. Since our people are divided into at least two sides based on their political standpoints, then people hate each other, and media also divides into many sides based on their own political standpoints. Some people hate some medias, and some medias hate other medias. So it is difficult to have an association of professional media who can regulate the content on some media. They will have a fight, and it will not really enforceable. So it is still quite far away from where we are right now, self-regulation. But it is just a concept that we use when we call for abolishment of restrictions, and the government asks us what else you want, what tools we can have to control the content. Then we talk about self-regulation, but it's not really a concrete rules or criteria that we have now. But for our next step, from our proposal, we already proposed to abolish the NCPO orders and announcements that already limit freedom of expression and limit the content in media. And this is a very little step that we need to take right now, and it is almost undebatable. If the media or people or any kind of persons in the society read the junta announcement, they will know that it should be abolished already, but we maybe talk too less about it.
Okay. Thank you. And Vicheika, maybe you can also share if there's already an effort in Cambodia for this self-regulation, especially in journalist community.
Well, in Cambodia, the self-regulation, here's the self-regulation that I and another 9 journalists in Cambodia, we discussed and we got this result. It's for the journalists, and another team also did this, but it's in Khmer only, no English, and it's it's the kind of the ethic for the internet users, and it's good for the people who use the internet in Cambodia. Well, in Cambodia, the self-regulation is very important to prevent from the accused from the government, because as I mentioned before, that in Cambodia now our freedom of expression online is very bad and simmed down recently, since the government arrested more people now, and we need to know more about the internet. Some people some people don't know how to use the internet, how to be safe, and we need to know the right of using internet too. If we just use the internet and we don't know how to express ourselves, or sometimes we just post something and criticize in very bad way, we know that the government or people don't like the way how the people criticize them, especially when they did something wrong. The government did something wrong, they don't like people to talk about their action. So when we post it, we must know that what we are posting is not in very bad way or make the government angry. So we need to know when we post, we use the normal word. I believe that even we use the normal word or the bad word, it still affect to the government, but they want to listen to the normal word, not the bad word. And when we sending or sharing something on the internet, we need to know about we need to ask ourselves, is it important? Is it affect to another people, or when we post that the government can accuse us or not? We need to know about this. And one more thing, we need to we do not treat others with any action that we know ourselves that we don't like that action, we don't like that word, so we need to treat another people like what we need to.
So part of your what do you think about self-regulation, that for self-regulation to be able to be implemented, there's need to also be a digital literacy among the internet user? Is that that kind of approach for the self-regulation that you...
Well, I think self-regulation is good if when people have the self-regulation, it's they know how to prevent themselves, but not the regulation from the government. When government they adopted something to manage or control the internet or the internet user, it means that they already ourselves already restrict.
Okay. So who do you think are the key players for this self-regulation? You mentioned already that the initiative came this time one from the journalists for the posting online, and what about the other initiative that you also shared? Is it where does it come?
This is from Cambodian Youth Network. They discussed and they got this one. But I think our own self need to know, and we need to create our self-regulation.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing this. And to Yin, how do you think about this?
Self-regulation.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid to say that when we talk about the self-regulations in my country, people think it is self-censorship. I'm really afraid to say that because we have self-regulation. Self-regulation means that self-censorship, and you have to speak the flowery speech. Online, offline, but it is not true because every day in every life in every person their daily conversation cannot be flowery in every day, right? Because we have many diversity in our country. So diversity, there is a diversity and there is a discrimination, a massive discrimination inside the country. So meaning that when you're talking about the self-censorship, self-regulation, the other, the marginalized ethnic group, indigenous group, they have to censor what, they cannot speak out whatever they are suffering in the ground. So this is, one thing, I want to make clear that in my country, when we talk about the self-regulation, it must be like a body, must be independent, that includes, many stakeholders, including the ACE part of the freedom of expression internationally, who know about the international norms and standards. That's what we want. But in this, situation, in my country situation, we have many priorities. We cannot even stop the civil war. So civil war and other, national reconciliation is our NLD government first priority. So at the time, I cannot really trust that kind of, self-regulatory body. We already have the media self-regulatory body for the print media, but it is not independent because it being established under the law, adopted by the semi-military government in the previous, U Thein Sein government, not in this NLD government. So I don't want the same mistake again inside the country. But of course, we can do after, we move forward after, we got some kind of understanding and value of the democratic country inside the country. Maybe we can found that, social media self-regulatory body. It is needed, of course. I don't say it is. It is not. It doesn't need. But meanwhile, what we can do only is for the online platform, for our free speech and for our safety, and also to respect other people's right and other people's rights to reputation. Is like we need. Facebook group to work to support more, to create support. To create a quality mediation process. Previously, Sheen said they have this kind of process. They need to listen to different people, not only one person. So when someone found that contact is really, dangerous for the community, and then we need to report. Yeah, it is true. We need to report. And also, we are just individual person inside the country. When the individual person see that, it is that, it is incitement, it is dangerous. But, for the expert, who knows really about what is freedom of expression, it is not, dangerous. It is not dangerous at all. The only needs we would like to urge Facebook is, to include in your team, to include, independent experts who understand about the, international standard and norms of the freedom of expression. And also, another thing is time frame. When we have the experience that, other civil society, people, when they report to the Facebook for the dangerous content, but it takes long time. It's like 4 days. But 4 days, of course, you have to do a lot of process. I understand in your side. But on the other side, like our country in a critical situation within the Rakhine crisis, Arakanese crisis, within 1 day, a post or a message, can release or can distribute to many people. We cannot stop that. So 4 days is really a law for us. So like this kind of stuff, I think we need, I believe that we need massive and concrete support from the Facebook team during this time before we cannot create any self-regulatory body inside country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your answer. And from Facebook, so Sheen, what do you think about this self-regulation? I mean, we cannot deny that Facebook and other internet companies will play a big part in this self-regulation. How do you think about that?
I mean, I think our community standards are a form of self-regulation, right? Like these are the standards that apply to one and all, to more than 2 billion people, and these are basically the minimum standards where we say like this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. And I think I'd like to sort of take this opportunity to also answer some of Yin's really important questions, and we do understand that we are improving on our sort of turnaround time. We are hiring more people. We are trying to we do have native language speakers who are reviewing content in Burmese, and we are also going to just expand our efforts for sure. So in due course, you will see much more from our end, and I mean it's not just about the language support, but there are, I think, a lot of technical difficulties also in the Burmese market in terms of the user interface language they're using, which is sort of like different from, I believe, the global standards, which is Unicode, and like in Burma they use Zoji. So it's very difficult for us to, even for our machines to read that sort of user interface language. I might have all these technical terms wrong, forgive me for that, but we are working on that. We have dedicated teams of engineers trying to solve for that problem, that very specific problem, and yes, I think we are going to.
Yeah, and so who do you think are the other key players that you need to work together in creating this efficient self-regulation?
I think it's a multi-stakeholder effort. It's not just one player or two players. I think everybody needs to come together and in a true internet governance forum fashion, have these conversations, have these sort of dialogues where just look at some best practices and learn from each other and take feedback. And I think it is always going to be a continuous process. And I think opportunities such as these are only going to benefit this overall governance. A question of governance.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for your sharing. So now we still have time to answer some questions from the floor if there's questions. So if everyone would like to shoot our panelists questions, please mention where your name, where are you from, and who is the questions directed to.
Thank you for the very interesting panel. My name is Phil Robertson. I'm with Human Rights Watch, and I actually have a question for the Facebook representative. I'm very glad that you're here. Increasingly, we're seeing Facebook is supplanting a lot of the media in terms of the source of news that people are reading and seeing. And I'd like to ask, how many, Burmese people do you have actually reviewing content for the Facebook? Because in Burma, this has become a major source of news. Both real news and so-called fake news. And I'd ask the same question for some of the other countries in Southeast Asia, for instance, Vietnam or Cambodia, where again, Facebook is becoming the major way that people get their information. And it would be helpful also to know whether Facebook has some sort of crisis management team or something that you can step in and actually do things when you realize that there is a crisis, as was indicated in the interview with Mark Zuckerberg, where he was saying that there was some communication that was finally being seen that people were using Facebook to spread hate speech and trying to promote action, both Buddhists against Muslims, but then Muslims against Buddhists. We read that there was a long delay between when civil society people in Myanmar actually told you all about that and actually something happens. So what is your plan for crisis management? Because these sort of things come up all the time in Southeast Asia.
Thank you. So Sheen, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And I think I have, most of it has been already dealt with in my presentation in terms of the policies that we have and how we enforce them. In terms of the number of reviewers, I believe I'm not at the liberty to disclose that, but we do have native language speakers, and we do have 24/7 coverage when we review content. That said, I think the specific case that I'm not really aware of, but I can definitely have a conversation with you after this panel in terms of how we deal. There are technical sort of difficulties as well when we look for certain kind of content. Like, is that text-based? Is that an imagery? Is that a screenshot that is being shared? So I think these are definitely problems we are trying to solve for. We do proactively look for content, whether it be terrorism, whether it be CEI, and in certain cases, violent speech, violent hate speech as well. We do that, but I believe there is a lot more to do, and we are working with civil society to improve that turnaround time and review content as soon as we can. And I said that we are hiring more people, we are hiring more local people to understand context and also understand intent. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, please.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm a PhD researcher actually on online hate speech here at McGill University. So I also have a question for you. So Facebook is a non-state actor and a key player in internet governance. And we assume that social media, and especially also Facebook, is kind of facilitating the promotion of human rights bottom up. So you said that their mission is about community, building communities. So when we talk about content restrictions based on country laws, that's exactly my emphasis. You said that the main goal is to ensure the safety of the community, but nothing has been said about protecting the business interests. So I would like to ask you, how much are those restriction choices tied to Facebook business interest as well, not just the laws? For example, so in June 2018, the gay pride flag was denied to many countries that had laws that were a little bit hostile to LGBT rights. So I've been studying these kind of issues. What happened, I mean, based from your perspective, you're saying, from my understanding, we are restricting the content because we want to protect the community. But based on my research, I saw that the online hate speech within communities increased actually in Facebook because of those restrictions. So instead of kind of protecting communities online, this generated more online hate speech by censoring people or restricting people's use of certain kind of tools. So I was just asking maybe whether you can expand more on the importance, the weight of the business interest in the choices of restriction of contents. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. And I think the answer to that is pretty simple, that it's up to the request. So it's a question of when we receive a request. So when we receive a request from a local government, we evaluate that for legal sufficiency, and that's when we take the decision, and we restrict that content in that given country only because it violates that country's law and not globally. That said, it's interesting that you sort of your research on like how restriction of that content led to more hate speech. I mean, I'm more than happy to have this conversation with you to learn more from your research, but one thing is clear, that hate speech, whatever may be the reason, is not allowed on our platform. So whatever the trigger is, if there is hate speech on the platform, that is not allowed, and that will be removed. So any attacks on people based on their protected characteristics such as their race, their sexual orientation, their sex, their nationality, and there's more parts to that as well, that will not be tolerated anyway. That will be removed from the platform.
Yeah. Is there any questions from the floor? Do we still have time? Okay. Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Oren. I work for ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights. I have another question for the Facebook rep. I'm wondering, so there was an issue, and the panelists from Cambodia may also comment on this, but there was an issue a few months ago in the context of a crackdown in Cambodia by the government, in which changes to Facebook's algorithm or the way that it posted stories in the news feed impacted the way stories were viewed. So it could kind of depress certain kinds of news coverage, basically to promote, I guess, non-news coverage. And this had impacts in Cambodia where, non-government source news receive less coverage in general. So I'm wondering, it's just more of a general question, how does Facebook think through those kinds of decisions? Not ones that relate to hate speech or specifics, but relate more towards other priorities, and how are those concerns brought into the conversations you have over policy?
Thanks for the question. I'm not really aware of if you're talking about the news feed changes, but I think the idea was to have more stories from your friends and family to appear on your sort of timeline. I am part of the content policy team, so I can't talk about the product policies or the product changes that are made, but from content policy side of things, whatever changes happen, I think whatever our policies, our community standards, they sort of deal with organic content, so to say, like people that is not paid, and our policies cover those organic content. I can't really answer the question on the product changes, but I'm happy to put you in touch with the relevant folks who can answer that question.
Okay, and thank you. So unfortunately now the time is limited, so we need to end this session. I would like to thank the panelists for this fruitful discussion. Thank you very much for your sharing. And as we discussed, we see that there are still a lot of questions, especially regarding self-regulation. But we hope that some of these questions at least can be answered in the second session, addressing the good practice and recommendations. Thank you.